it's so hard to put on that mask, that facade. And you think, I have to be this person because if I change it, they're not going to like me. That will kill you. That will not just destroy your happiness, that will destroy your life.
"83% of Americans identify as not very happy, which can hold you back and negatively affect your relationships and your business. On this podcast, we discuss the proven steps to happiness so you can restore balance and rekindle your joy."
Welcome to How to Be Happier for Entrepreneurs. We're so glad you're here to explore mindset and habits that can unlock your fullest potential and lead to greater success and fulfillment, both at work and at home. Every episode, we bring you experienced guests, powerful stories, and practical tools to help you transform your business and your life starting today. You know, life isn't just about surviving. If you've been listening to us, it's about thriving. And today's guest will absolutely show you how to do that. I am thrilled to introduce Chris Miles, host of the popular podcast Money Ripples and a renowned money coach who's helped countless individuals build wealth. But today, we're peeling back the layers to talk about a different kind of wealth, the kind that transforms your life from the inside out. So, before we dive into this inspiring conversation, you do not want to miss it. I'm going to give you a quick message from our sponsor, Limitless You. It's more than just a sponsor, it's an invitation to a life-changing adventure. So stay tuned. It's a message you won't want to miss.
Hi, I'm Brad Chandler. For over 20 years, I flipped 4,500 homes, chasing success I thought would bring peace. What I didn't realize was the stress and chaos weren't from my business. They were signals of deeper issues.
And I'm Yvonne. My path was different, but equally eye-opening. I spent years transforming organizations into high-performing powerhouses, yet I neglected my own well-being. When I began uncovering subconscious patterns and listening to my body, everything changed.
That's why we founded Limitless You, to help business owners and executives like you uncover and conquer the subconscious beliefs holding you back. Whether it's the stress of business chaos, overworking, relationship problems, or anxiety and self-doubt, these are signals, indicators of deeper patterns that can be rewired to unlock your full potential.
Imagine building a business that fuels your joy and fulfillment.
If you're ready to stop surviving and start thriving, visit unlocklimitlessyou.com and book a free session.
Let us help you build a life that doesn't just look good, but also feels good.
Welcome back. You're in for a real treat. We have someone who embodies success and wealth, not just on the outside, but on the inside too. I'm so excited for what I believe is going to be a profoundly inspiring conversation that could help you start unlocking your own potential. Chris, welcome.
Hey, Yvonne, it's good to be here.
Awesome. You've been on an incredible journey of self-discovery, vulnerability, and freeing yourself from beliefs some you knew you had and some you didn't, and just getting rid of some patterns that no longer served you. I've been so honored to witness your transformation firsthand. And now our listeners are going to get the privilege of hearing how you've stepped into your authentic self, not only to transform your happiness, but to create a life far richer than financial wealth could ever do for any person. So for those listening, if you think, oh, I'm kind of in the dumps, or you think I'm doing well, this is a conversation that's going to open your eyes to meet you wherever you're at. No matter how well you're doing, so much more is possible. So let's dive in and hear from Chris. Chris, I have a few questions for you, but I want this to be a natural conversation.
Well, the first question is, how do you still have hair after dealing with me for so long? You know?
You'll have to meet my mom and my dad. It comes in abundance.
That's right.
It's been an honor and privilege, Chris. You've been so honest and direct that I knew I was dealing with somebody that was on a mission to fully reach his authenticity. Some people get afraid to speak their mind, right? Some people hide it. Some people don't want to hurt other people's feelings. And so I always start off saying, like, what does vulnerability mean? And I make sure that people are open. And I was just so pleased that I didn't have to worry about that with you. So I can't wait for you to share that authenticity with the crowd that's listening too. You've done so much even before I knew you, right? So I want to hear about all of it. You're known right now for your expertise as a money coach and helping others achieve financial independence. And most of the world's like, oh, that's all I need, right? I just need to have money and then I'll be happy, or I just need more money and then I'll be happy. Can you share what led you to explore a deeper personal transformation outside of financial success?
I've always kind of been on that journey to some level. Like for example, I mean, when I decided to become a business owner, I was originally going to become a business consultant, but I figured why would I give business owners advice when I've never had a business myself? Just being some snotty little kid coming out of college, with the trying
That
to
was
have an
what I did.
MBA. Yeah, it's like I'll just tell you guys what to do. I mean, I've never ran a business before, but you should listen to me, right? So I actually went looking for a business, and that's where I became a financial advisor. And the thing I'm grateful for, even though I'm the anti-financial advisor, I tell people not to listen to financial advisors anymore. The thing that I loved in those first 4 years when I was doing that was they were really, really big on personal development. They were all about you got to change your mindset. You've got to grow if you want your money to grow. And that's so true. Now, I'll tell you this. I mean, you have to have the right perspectives and the right tools to support it. When you have a bunch of people in scarcity trying to teach you how to not be in scarcity, really you just stay in scarcity, right? Um, and that's one thing I learned firsthand. And so I did learn a lot of things. I read like the Think and Grow Rich. I read, Rich Dad Poor Dad. I read, How to Win Friends and Influence People. That was the first personal development book they had me read. And so many other books as well, whether it be on leadership, on prosperity, and on you name it in between, right? But for me, I mean, it really, when I get around the right people and when I have the right systems or tools, then that's when the rubber hits the road. And for me, for 4 years, the financial advisor, it never really quite grasped that. In fact, I never really felt financially, really financially well off until I left being a financial advisor, started doing the opposite, and started learning about the principles of abundance and what real wealth is. Then the money was able to follow. And I think that's what people don't realize, that so many people, especially in this Instagram, TikTok, short reel world that we have today, everybody wants you to just give you the little nuggets, and somehow you're going to watch a bunch of short videos or maybe a few long videos. And the next thing you know, you're going to be financially free. And that's just not the case. Like you've got to develop yourself as a person to allow
Mhm.
that cup to get bigger. So then you can fill up the cup more with money.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that you said, I want to pull the thread on, awareness is a very important first step, even knowledge. Like
Mhm.
there's knowledge of
Yeah.
outside of you, there's conscious knowledge of you, but then there's subconscious knowledge of you to get to that full cup, right?
Hmm.
They say by the time you're 35, 95% of what you say, do you think everything is driven by your subconscious. So if you're this cup and 95% of it you don't know about, you're only operating with 5% of it.
That's right.
So I think one of the things I want to ask you about that's going to be really compelling for our listeners is we are overwhelmed with all this information, right? There's so much information. You go chat GPT anything, right?
Hmm.
You don't even need to know anything. You just chat GPT it and there it is. But that's not what's going to create embodiment. And by embodiment, I mean moving beyond what you know, what even you have awareness of in your subconscious, to being and living and truly believing in a way that you want to. So you had a lot of knowledge, you had a lot of awareness, and you had some embodiment, but you wanted more embodiment. So, guys, if you're listening and you're like, I don't even know what they're talking about or where I'm at, go take our self love quiz. I'll put it down here. It's unlocklimitlessyou.com/quiz. No matter what results you get, this is what I really want Chris to talk about too. He scored high self love. He has a lot of knowledge, he has a good amount of embodiment, and he also knows he's limitless. We are all limitless. That's why we changed the name of our company to Limitless You. We want you to be able to continue to grow. And so you were talking about, Chris, the right tools. You were talking about surrounding yourself with the quote unquote right people. What have you done to get from knowledge and awareness to increasing embodiment, to being the way that you authentically are and want to be.
Yeah, I think like the same thing you're saying is almost like what the Freemasons call. I think it's the word is inculcate, if that's the right word. Like really, how do you like internalize it into your being and into your heart, right? And that's where you do have to go beyond just the knowledge. Like for example, of course, I'm in the money space, so it's easy for me to call back on that. But in the money space, a lot of times there'll be two different types of camps of people, right? You get the one person that's always about the strategy, but they haven't quite figured out how to make it work. And they've studied it. They say the right words,
Right.
but they don't have the results to match what they're thinking about or trying to talk about. That was kind of like me, a little bit to some degree. And then you get the other extreme. You get a lot of people, especially in like the energy healing space. I've worked with a lot of people in that space too, and they'll regurgitate words like, money comes freely and easily to me, things like that. Yet it never comes freely and easily to them, and they're always complaining and they hate money because they have this belief, for example, that if you have money or if you're rich, you're really a jerk. So
Oh,
so
yeah.
subconsciously they fight that. They're like, oh yeah, money comes freely and easily, but don't give me money because I don't want to become evil, or become that person.
Right.
I'm not doing this for the money, right? So they keep pushing away, rejecting it. And that's why there is the mindset piece. And some of those people will address the mindset and say, oh, I need to have an abundance mindset. But then they won't necessarily have the relationship with money either, right? Like you gotta have the relationship to match too. What's the behaviors to match the so-called beliefs that are coming out of your mouth, right? And do you
Right.
really believe it? Do you really believe it to the point where you're like, oh, like I really understand that money. This is what changed for me is that when money became something that was, really like it became formulaic. When I realized that I would always ask, how do I make more money? But everybody's asked that since the beginning of time, and there's still a lot of broke people. When I started learning from good mentors, much like yourself, right? And mentors in the financial space specifically, when they would say things, no, stop asking that question. Instead, ask, what's the real core of money? What's the root of money? If you go to like Atlas Shrugged, they talked about, Francisco gives his money speech in front of a bunch of party goers because people would be rich, but they would try to deny it, say, oh, I don't like money. And they're like, money is the root of all evil. He's like, well, if money is the root of all evil, what's the root of money? And so he
Right.
starts to walk it backwards. He's like, he talks about the root of money, like money's really value offered, right? Value delivered. When you create value for other people, when you serve people, you solve problems for them, that's actually value. That's where money comes from. That's the root of money. So if all service and problem solving and solutions, which is good in the world, if that's now evil, that means good is actually evil. Therefore, there is no good or evil, right? And it's like it just doesn't match up. It's not true. It doesn't align with real principle. And so when you start to align with real principles, then it starts to make sense. So kind of like going, now coming back full circle here, right? I mean, even when you had been working with me, yeah, I could say I can give all these, I mean, like I'm not new to the personal development space. Like I know about doing vision boards and I never really had those work that great with me. They were okay. More vision statements would work better, or create your ideal vision, right? But it never quite got to the subconscious level that I wanted to
Yeah.
get to, right? Because it doesn't remove the real issues. Like it's like it's almost like, oh, look at these weeds, hack, 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 and then next thing you know, the weeds come up again. You're like, oh, I'm just always weeding. Like, why do they keep coming back? And for me specifically, like, my big thing was like I just didn't feel like I was enough. And I've realized, I'll tell you, I mean, maybe you're not going here, maybe you are, but as
We
kind of
go
a
wherever we want to go.
kudos to you specifically, Yvonne. I just released a podcast with you on my Money Ripples podcast where I said this is my best investment of 2024 out of all the real estate investments, and I've had some really good investments, by the way. This was the one that paid off the
Aw,
most.
I love that.
And I even shared that with a very intimate mastermind group I was a part of earlier this week. Some people locally in Salt Lake, and of course, everybody's like, "Who is that?" I'm like, "It's Yvonne Trost, Limitless You. You got to like check them out." And they're like, "I got to get this down." Understand that all these guys are like successful business owners. Yes, from the outside, we look successful, right? Money's coming in. I even told them that. I said, "Listen, like 2024." Like anybody looking from the outside would say, wow, your business is doing great. You're in the top 1% of podcasts worldwide. Like everything looks amazing. You're doing well. Well, of course I am because, I have enough passive income come in. So financially things look good. Even business things look good. On the inside though, I was dying, right?
Mhm.
And that's what happens with a lot of successful business owners that yes, financially and even in the business, everything looks dandy. but what's going on in their personal relationships? What's going on with sometimes with their own personal health? I mean, health is something I've always put a priority on, but even I noticed there was something breaking down with my health because I was driving myself and pushing, all again because I lacked that, really that confidence that I was enough. And I know
Exactly.
that's something you really help kind of pound into me, not just verbally, but subconsciously, right? And getting to the point where I could start accepting that. That's where my first third of the year of 2024, I would say in one word, was suck. Um, Second third was, transition or, holy crap, to the point of like, okay, maybe I want to be alone on this earth forever, and all that stuff. Maybe I don't need people. I don't need to impress anybody. In fact, I don't even want people around me. And then kind of bring it back into balance the last third of the year to, okay, you can still have people around you and you can be, still prioritize yourself, not have boundaries crossed and still be a go-giver and not be a martyr, right? And that kind of thing.
Absolutely. That's
And
so
that's still a
powerful.
transition. It's still a transition for me,
Absolutely.
but that applies to business, right? I mean, because in business, you start to give and give and give. I'll tell you, there's one relationship that I've given a lot because I was trying to make up for the bad performance on their end, but I didn't want them to blame me. So I would overcompensate
Yeah.
to make up for their part so I didn't feel bad about myself, right? When in reality, I said, you know what? Screw that. Like, enough of me trying to spend extra dollars and all this stuff to make up for their lack of commitment. I'm like, I'm going to let them do their thing. I'm going to release this. I'm going to let them own their part. We'll just own ours, which we were already doing anyways, and let it be there. And it's amazing how much more liberating and free and happy you can be when you allow that to happen.
Absolutely. Guys, if you're thinking like, "Oh, well, I'm good," or "I'm confident," or "I don't even know what they're talking about. My business is great. I don't need this." Like, if you're a human being, this applies to you.
Mhm.
If whether you are an entrepreneur or you're not an entrepreneur, anything that you interact with that is a human being, including yourself, this is really important. We have this self-love quiz, and at first I thought, "Oh, that's woo-woo. Who's gonna take that?" And I've been, like, called woo-woo for a while now because I was in corporate America serving, federal agencies and Fortune 500, and I'm talking about yoga and meditation, and everybody around me is like, "What's the matter with you?" Well, nothing was the matter with me. I had just found a secret they hadn't found yet, and
Mhm.
Chris is sharing some really profound secrets with you. So if you feel like you're doing well, but you, like, plateaued, you really need to understand how much do you value yourself? Even if you're confident, if somebody says like they think you're too confident, you're probably actually not,
Mhm.
right? Quite often we mask our feelings of not feeling enough with external things, whether you're striving to make more money or you're striving to get a certain promotion or you're buying a bunch of stuff or you're in a bunch of relationships or you're trying to get into a relationship. Anything that you're putting energy into that's outside of you is usually just something because you're missing something inside of you. And at Limitless You, I didn't tell Chris he wasn't enough. If people tell you something, you usually don't listen, or if you listen, you forget it, right? This is about, I tell people it's like a subconscious safari. And you get to tell me what you're looking for. You get to tell me what you're scared about, right? And then we discover it because that's how you get to the root of it. Those weeds he talked about, most of the coaching programs you go or the therapy you go to for years, you're chopping at the top of the weed, or maybe you get a little bit, but you're not getting to the root. The root is in your subconscious and you just don't know it's there. And that's okay. It's not your fault. We're a complicated species, right? So when Chris said he's got to think about what are the right tools and what are the right people, Chris is one of the right people, right? And he's found some right tools. So Chris, what advice would you give somebody listening, whether they haven't achieved the success they want, they're plateaued, or they just want to hit the next level? Like, what would you say should be the first thing that they start doing?
That's where I always like to invest in whatever is I need next, right? Um, like having a good mentor helps, and I like mentors that have been there, done that, still doing it today. To be fully transparent here, I know Brad's not here to defend himself, but I knew Brad before he started doing this stuff, and he was a great guy, friendly guy. But then all of a sudden he starts talking about like how he's so happy and he's just smiling all the time. And honestly, like part of me was like, is this all BS? Come on, is this just like a fake Brad showing up? Of course, I'm projecting my own, fakeness, as I'm doing that, right? But then I started to realize, like, oh no, he's legitimately, like, he is different. He's like, I could tell, like, even on a more sincere level, even if you had him one on one versus when he's talking to a group, like, oh no, there's something different, right? And that's the thing you want to look for. Like, I always tell people that when I look for any kind of mentors, those that have been there, they've done it, but they're still doing it now. It's not like somebody who's
Absolutely.
like, 30 years ago, I did this. I can't do it again, but I did it then. Like, that's not quite good enough. It's somebody who's not perfect necessarily, but they can at least get you to that next level. And maybe they're already at a place where you want to be. And so whatever that is, whatever you're going for, and especially if you do, like you said, if you keep hitting limits and walls, and you're like, man, I'm trying. If you say, quote unquote, I've tried everything, which is never true, but if you say, like, you've tried things and, like, things just don't seem to work, it's almost like there's this glass ceiling, like you just can't break through it. It's probably because there are some subconscious beliefs or some sort of trauma that you're have experienced or experiencing that's keeping from that. Um, and I'll add to that too. I was actually interviewing another guy on my podcast, and we were talking about really, like, trauma, almost business trauma, so to speak, right? And I even brought that up because, of course, I was working with you, Yvonne, and I asked him right on the show. I was like, I'm not planning to go this direction, but, like, how often do you think successful business owners are actually like are actually, like, successful because of trauma or because of, almost feeling of lack or their fears, like maybe there's a fear of poverty or something. And his answer was, in my experience, and he's like, he got $100 million company. He's like, in my experience, just about everybody, like almost everybody I know that's successful is either running away from something, they're trying to, like, please their father or something like that, to show that they're valuable, or they're trying to, like, they were in poverty at one point, so they never ever want to be in poverty, so they will overwork and they'll do everything possible to an unhealthy level just to prove that they're successful, right?
Yeah.
He's like, it's very, very rare you'll find anybody who does that from a healthy level. And it's not that you shouldn't, like, it's not that those things don't show up good, because you could still be doing amazing things in life and accomplishing great things, helping a lot of people, but still you may not be doing it from a healthy place. And I think that's
Absolutely.
where, specifically when we're talking about like this with hypnotherapy and everything else, that subconscious stuff that needs to be removed and that needs to be worked on so that you can stay healthy and happy and have that more of a life of harmony versus a life of just hustle.
I love that. I love that. There's so many things that I want to pull the thread on. The first is, if you're listening and you heard the word trauma and you're like, oh, I don't have any trauma. I didn't either. I didn't think I did either. Trauma is a very misunderstood word, right?
Mhm.
There could be like big T trauma. Like when Brad first met him and he was talking about this, I'm like, I don't have any trauma. He's like, you wouldn't have married that guy and stayed in that relationship if you didn't have something happen. And so then I'm like, oh, well, maybe he's got a point. And then I started learning, like, the difference between, like, big T trauma. Like, I didn't have any big T trauma, right? There was no physical abuse or sexual abuse or abandonment or any of that. But I did
Right.
have little T trauma, and everybody has some element of little T trauma, because if you didn't have a perfect childhood, and nobody has, there's no such thing as perfect. Really, when we say trauma, it's like, were all of your needs met perfectly as a child, and you felt completely safe and authentic and taken care of as your authentic self. I haven't found a single person that could say yes to that. And that's not beating up parents, that's just the human being. So when you're little, you give meaning to those experiences. And
Mhm.
that meaning you give those experiences never gets upgraded, and it rules your life, right? So, what Chris is talking about when he says the subconscious work is understanding what happened to you. Could be a big deal or a small deal to you today, right? It could look normal because it happened to everybody else, but normal doesn't necessarily mean healthy. Understanding what meaning that you gave it as a child, and how has that been ruling your life in a way that no longer serves you as an adult.
Yep.
So, Chris, I think of all the people that I know, there's a handful that have like this. I'll give you like this big V, like you're Superman, and you have a V when you take off your shirt, and it's V for vulnerability,
Uh-huh.
right? Because Chris shares so openly, whether it's a podcast we were on or any other instance, he shares what he's going through. He doesn't try to pretend. right? He walks his talk and he's honest. And he's doing that because he wants you, well, number one, because that's who he is, and he wants to pay it forward. That's why Brad and I do what we do. We don't want you to have to keep masks on. And when we say, I'm going to air quote, if you're listening, I'm air quoting success. Success on the outside, but being like miserable or unhappy on the inside, I don't think is true success. It is external metrics met that other people have deemed success. But if you're unhappy on the inside, that's not your success. That's somebody else's definition. So, Chris, what I'd love to ask you now is, how have you developed your superpower of vulnerability, right? Because it's not easy for a lot of people, especially high achievers, business owners, entrepreneurs, me as a recovering consultant, right?
Mhm.
We were in the beginning, it was like you're supposed to know everything and pretend like you know everything and always have a solution and always be right.
Uh-huh.
Towards the end of my career, we finally wised up and remembered, we figured out, oh no, you're not supposed to know everything. You're supposed to be trustworthy. You're supposed to share. You're supposed to have, like, failure is learning, is a fast feedback loop. Not everybody can embrace yet that failure is a good thing. Like, failure just means you've experimented and you've learned something and that you can grow from it. So for people that are listening that they think the V word, the vulnerability word, is a bad word,
Mhm.
or they avoid failure at all costs, or they beat themselves up if they fail, what was the turning point for you where you were like, no, I can actually embrace this? And how has it changed your life?
Yeah, so you basically want me to rip off my "I love passive income" T-shirt and pull off the V shirt, right?
Yes, he's gonna do it. Come watch it on YouTube.
It's funny because I appreciate you the kind words about being vulnerable and everything, but that wasn't me. And when mean that, I mean like that hasn't been me in the past. Because it's so exhausting not being you.
It is.
It's so draining, and I experienced this first because I've been in business for over like 23 years now, and I was financial advisor for 4 years. Then I was able to retire because I had enough passive income from my real estate. Then I came out of retirement in 2007 to teach people how to get out of the rat race, only to find myself back in the rat race by 2008. So I stopped teach people how to do that because I was out of integrity. I didn't want to be too vulnerable and tell them, "Hey, I'm broker than you are. Do you want to hire me?" I didn't do that. That was business suicide. But at least I was trying to teach things that I was actually doing, which was, how do you get scrappy? How do you find money when you don't realize that you don't know where to find it, right? But that created a whole new business, and eventually I launched Money Ripples, and then now I teach about passive income because I was able to do it the second time by end of 2016. That being said, all during that period of time, there were so many challenges of vulnerability, right? Where I didn't want to be vulnerable, where I felt like, for example, trying to coach people about getting out of the rat race when you're back in it, you feel like a fraud, right? You have that
Yeah.
imposter syndrome, so to speak. You know, I'll tell you more recently, about, I think it was like 2013, 2014. So just after I launched Money Ripples, which was in end of 2012, I remember I was sitting at lunch with some, other fellow entrepreneurs, and I was more involved in the women entrepreneur space. And the business coach that kind of coached all of us just said, "Hey, tell me about like your worst nightmare or something like that." And so I shared a nightmare, which kind of put a big gloomy cloud over the whole group. And it wasn't a nightmare like scream, like knives coming out, nothing like that. It was a nightmare of inauthenticity,
Mhm.
because the dream was this, is that, and so I used to be a ballroom dancer, like one of the nation's top amateur ballroom dancers. And so, and I would actually get up on stage, like when I would present, because it would entertain people and make them laugh and everything else. So I would actually show like ballroom dance moves or whatever, to kind of illustrate a point and then teach about money. And so they all knew me as like, oh, the guy, he's my ballroom dance guy and he's my finance guy, right? He's like dance and finance.
Talk about
So,
differentiated.
yeah, I know. Yeah, I just kind of throw it all together, to make it kind of part of me, right? But the thing is, and what I didn't notice is that when I was having this dream, if you can imagine, like it was like an evening setting with like the street lamp posts, brick layout road, almost like Main Street of Disneyland. If you've been to
Mhm.
Disneyland, right? So it's kind of like that kind of Main Street feel to it. And so all of a sudden, I'm a part of this big dance company, this group. We're all like dancing and stuff, swinging on the light poles, or all that kind of stuff, right? And all of a sudden, we hit our final pose, and everybody's cheering and clapping. The crowd's around, and I get on the mic. I say, "Hey, if you thought that was awesome, come inside. I'm going to teach you about how to, find more cash flow and create financial freedom. Come in here, And I go inside expecting to see this huge crowd of people that have followed me. And instead, all I see is the cameraman and empty seats.
Yeah.
And as I'm sitting there, I'm like, okay, what do I do? Like, this is crushing. Like, they all love my dance, but they didn't love what I really want them to do. And I just told the cameraman, I said, all right, well, let's record it as if people are here. And then I woke up. It was a nightmare for me because I realized I was literally doing a song and dance. I was
Yeah.
trying to entertain people, trying to get people to be entertained, edutained, or whatever you want to call it, edutainment, right? Education and entertainment together. But it was just draining me. And I'd be exhausted when I do events because I was trying to be somebody who I really wasn't. I'm actually much more naturally introverted, but I was trying to be this overly extroverted person. I was trying to be something I thought people wanted me to be, which I've been doing ever since I was a little kid, whether it be with my parents, with my teachers. So I'd be the teacher's pet. And then, of course, I was too smart and then too nerdy. And then the kids would pick on me. So then I tried to be like the jocks, even though I wasn't a jock, but I would join sports just to try to impress them, which I am kind of grateful for joining sports part, but not for the part that I was just trying to not get beat up as a
Right.
kid, all this stuff, trying to pretend somebody to be somebody who somebody else wants me to be. And the most liberating thing and the most energy saving thing for me, and happiness, lack of happiness drains and everything else, was to be able to say, I can just be me. And I'll tell you, like, after probably around 2016, after going through a divorce and after trying to try to understand who I was more and more, it was so much more liberating. And actually, I got better business. I not only got more business coming in, but the clients that came in were people I actually liked. They
Yes.
weren't like hosers for trying to, use more edited versions here, but they weren't like people I hated. Like, I just dreaded to want to coach. They were people that were salt of the earth, good people that knew who they were, or at least trying to understand who they were. Right. And they were wanting to do good in the world, just like I was. And the more I the more I understood who I was and who really aligned with who I am, then of course the clients that I got in my business were way, way better, to the point where I'm like, I like my business again. I like coaching people. I like being around these people. These are people that I could actually hang out with. And some of them even like you, because they end up hiring you as well. Right. And that's good too. So I guess that's the big thing, is really like, if you want to, again, it's that happiness comes when you're not draining your energy so much for trying to be somebody you're not.
Absolutely. And I think what I love about this, I'm going to tie a couple things together. We talk about the entrepreneurial myth that, and I'm new to entrepreneur land. I come from corporate America, and as I came in, I'm like, whoa, this is no joke. So if you're an entrepreneur, like, hands up to you for even like trying and staying in it. If you've been in it for a while, I find over and over again, though, that you're right. Just like that guy said, that they say the entrepreneurial edge, right, is some type of trauma, or is some type of feeling of not enough. And we've run into a lot of people that are like, well, I'm too afraid of what would happen to my success if I got rid of this feeling of I'm not enough, right? If I got
Right.
rid of, like, is my hustle going to completely go and then everything's going to fall apart? And what I love about your story is it confirms where I tell them, I'm like, you might think it's your edge, but it's also your early grave.
Yes.
It's your early grave, literally, like low grade stress or high grade stress causes low grade inflammation or high grade inflammation, both of which shorten your lifespan as well as your quality of life while you are alive. So then you have to ask yourself, do I want to be really financially wealthy and live a short, stressful life? Like, or do I want to live a really long life and then be somewhere between, financially, could even be more financially wealthy? Like Chris's story, like, shows us, right? That Chris, when you started like thinking about your internal health, the stuff that some people are like, you said invest in what you need right now. Most people don't think, oh, I need to invest in me and what I need inside of me. They think, I need a new CRM, or I need a new sales lead, or I need, a new operations lead, or I need a new boat, or I need a new house, or I need all this
Mhm.
stuff. Right. And what I love about what I hear you saying is that once you realized what you really needed was you, and to get to know the authentic you and to figure out how to live as the authentic you, that then not only did the prosperity and financial abundance come, but you actually enjoyed it along the way. Is that right? Am I hearing that
Yeah.
right?
Money is never worth your unhappiness, right? I mean, I think I think everybody knows that consciously, but I think some of us still think that, well, it's just like the old belief that, oh, well, a job has got to be something you hate. You just do it for the job, not because I love it,
Yeah, that's what I was
which
taught.
is just ridiculous. It's like, why would I do that to myself? Why would I spend my entire life doing something I hate? And then hopefully I'll have enough life left to finally start doing what I love. That's one thing I teach a lot. It's like, how to create prosperity now versus waiting till later.
Yeah, I was
But
gonna wait till I retired to start living.
yeah, but I'll tell you, Yvonne, like, and I was just talking about this with you before we got on the air, right? Is that the number one thing that now it kind of impresses me? It's funny because it kind of hurts your ego sometimes, the old ego versus the new one. But we were talking about like one of our mutual clients, that he went out to lunch with me and he said, I'll be honest, I asked around to see kind of like, is this Chris Miles guy for real? Right. Because when you got guys out there, especially talking about passive income, financial independence, and freedom, like there's a lot of BSers and charlatans out there.
Right.
And so he asked somebody and they just said, you know what, with Chris, what you see is what you get. And he said, like, he's like sitting down with me. This is after I started working with you, Yvonne. He's like, honestly, now being with you, it's exactly it. Like the way you are in your podcast or even with your clients and how you present yourself is exactly what you're like with me. And it's not like I'm teaching like, hey, I'm speaking to the whole room, like Matt Foley, motivational speaker. I'm not doing that. But no, like it's who I was. And even funny, the thing that hurt my ego was just on New Year's Eve. My the woman that does like our sales consults, that kind of screens out our people to make sure they're qualified to work with us. The guy reached out to her. He said, I've actually been following Chris's podcast for the last few months, and I'm following a bunch of other people. But I'll tell you, he's not as polished as the rest of them. In fact, he's not very polished at all. But maybe that's why I believe him.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know if I should be offended by that and say like, oh, this guy's kind of rough around the edges, but maybe he's authentic. And the thing is, they end up hiring us the next day. And so regardless, I mean, if I resonate with him being me, that means he's never going to be disappointed. Right.
Absolutely. You don't have
Where
to fake it.
it's so hard to put on that mask, that facade. And you think I have to be this person because if I change it, they're not going to like me. That will kill you. That will not just destroy your happiness. That will destroy your life. And it's just
Absolutely.
not worth it.
Because you gotta have a mask for every single person, because every single person wants something different.
That's right. And then you
So
don't even know who you are anymore. And then you're like,
no,
what am I? Who am I? Right? You're just lost.
I was always looking for more energy, more energy. And I'm like, what? I'm healthy. I don't eat that bad. Why don't I have all this energy? And it was because I was
Mhm.
wearing all those masks and having to keep
Yeah.
switching them based upon what client I was talking to and what I
Mhm.
wasn't being my authentic self. And now, sometimes I have 2 teenage boys. They're like, "Mom, you're kinda weird." I'm like, "I'd rather be weird than normal because normal's boring and it's usually not healthy." So, when you live authentically as you, right? And if you're like I'm gonna leave you with a couple things. If you're listening and you're like, "I don't even know if I am authentic anymore," and I don't like, what I want you to start doing, and whether you work with us at Limitless You or somebody else, we have a ton of free tools. Go to unlocklimitlessyou.com and /resources are on the resources tab. And there's something called getting to the root of it.
Mm.
And what I want you to do is anything that you want, I want you to use that getting to the root of it tool. Right? Because like Chris said earlier, it's not necessarily money. You want to be valued. Money is an exchange of value. It's a representation that I am enough, right?
Mhm.
And usually you don't know how you want to be valued. It's not the dirty paper. What do you want to be valued for? Why do you want to be valued? Why don't you feel valued? Like there's different tools that you can use, whether you work with us as a life coach or you join our community or the whatever. Just start getting to know you, the real you, right? The human being, the authentic person you were born to be. And you're going to find more energy. You're going to find more abundance. And you're going to find, like Chris did, lots of opportunities opening up to you that you never thought possible, just as you. And that's a lot easier to be just you. And then all that energy you were wasting, you get to spend bringing your dreams into reality. Chris, I wish we could talk for hours because this is so powerful. And I love everything that you're sharing with our audience. So, what do you think is, what advice could you give someone if, they're just like, okay, what do I do next? I hear you, Chris. I feel your energy, right? Because you are real. We are authentic. Like what you see is what you get with us, right? This is who we are. We're the real thing. If somebody wants to feel that way, what should they do next? What would you say?
Well, take that next step, stop thinking about it for so long. Sometimes we overanalyze, sometimes we just keep thinking and thinking we're going to do this. At some point you got to either like you said, click on that link, right? Go to the resources, like do the activity, go and reach out and just ask the question, start a conversation, whomever that might be, whether it's with Yvonne or whoever else, right? Like start the conversation and just move forward. That's the biggest thing I've seen that cost me the most money is when I just think about something and then don't act. There's an opportunity cost there. That lost opportunity cost can not just cost you money, cost you time, cost you your happiness. Heck, it can cost you your marriage. I tell successful people all the time, it's like, honestly, you probably want this stuff for yourself because a divorce, losing half your assets is probably gonna be more expensive than anything you're gonna invest in from a coaching standpoint. So why not do it, right? Like stop delaying and just do something about it.
Absolutely. We have 3 steps to keep it easy to remember. You realize with your conscious and your subconscious, you figure out what you want to recode too. Like
Mhm.
you've been living a lie for so long, these untruths. People know what they don't want. They don't know what they do want. What do you want? Figure that out. And then to Chris's point, take action. Start to rewrite. The way you get to embodiment is through taking action. Small steps, big steps, whatever they are, just like you said, take action. So, Chris, people want to hear more of that real you and get in touch with you. How do they reach you? How do they get to know you better?
Well, I mean, I'm a Virgo. Yeah, if you want to read into that too much, but I like walks on the beach. But in addition to that, you can also just search up anything that's Money Ripples, whether it's moneyripples.com, at Money Ripples on social media, or even like Money Ripples podcast. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I share and I give that could be of great value to you.
Absolutely. And if you're like, what's this Money Ripples business about? Guys, I love Chris's whole idea. I've never thought about it with a ripple, but like explain to them why ripples. What are we doing with them?
Well, it's a ripple effect, right?
Mhm.
I've realized in my own life and other people's too that the more that we're blessed financially, the more that we're able to create more freedom and financial freedom for ourselves, the more resource we have to bless the lives of those around us. And it creates a ripple effect, not just with our families, but even with our communities, the country, and ultimately across the world. And so, I mean, how amazing would it be? There are literally like thousands of families that are now financially free to be able to go serve. And maybe they want to go serve, like church missions or things like that. Maybe they want to go and just be able to do their passion project and do the thing that they felt they were called to do in the first place, or even it's just stay in the same lane they're in because they love what they do, but they just want to do it where they're work optional. They work because they want to, not because they have to. I mean, when you have that kind of freedom, you stop looking at your own life and stop being hyper focused on yourself, and you start looking at others and how you can be a blessing in their lives.
Absolutely. I love it. And we don't have ripple in our name, but we're going to join Chris in this ripple effect. And guys, once you start working on the authentic you and the subconscious you will see a ripple effect in your whole life, at work, at home, and like Chris said, even in your community and what you can do. Chris, thank you so much for sharing your story and your wisdom today. You've
Yeah, thanks
shown
for letting me
us.
ramble about stuff and talk about my childhood traumas and whatnot. So that's great.
We could go. We'll have you again. I love it. There's so much that we can learn, and you guys learn from his. He's like he said, he wasn't born necessarily in the past adult life vulnerable, but now he is, and he's stepping into his vulnerability and his authenticity, and he's continuing to unlock a life that's not only financially successful, but one that he enjoys. So, Chris, your journey's been a gift, and I know it's going to inspire everybody that's listening. If you are listening, our mission at Limitless You is to help 1 million people break free from the patterns and these limiting beliefs and masks that we're all taught to wear that's been holding us back and keeping us from our dreams. We can't do it alone. Chris is helping. We're all sharing in this story and this inspiration. If you found today's episode valuable, take a moment to like it, share it, leave a review, share with somebody who needs to hear it. Talk to people about, Chris talks about this stuff on his podcast too. Occasionally he will be on there. Guys, do what he said. Start surrounding yourself with the people that are right for you and the energy that's right for you. Once you change your thinking, you really can change your life. You can believe you're enough. You can know you're enough. So until next time, thank you for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode of How to Be Happier for Entrepreneurs soon.
Hit subscribe if you don't want to miss out on more life-changing content. And if you're struggling, you don't have to. Go to bradchandler.com/contact. There, you can join the Facebook community of like-minded entrepreneurs, and you'll see a button to schedule your freedom and happiness call. See you on the next episode.